Welcome back to the Hubscale podcast, where we dive into the minds of security leaders all around the world. This week, I'm joined by Robert Johnston, the CEO of Adlumin. I'm looking forward to diving into multiple topics today. It's great to have you on, Robert.
Great. Thanks for having me, Elliott.
No problem at all. So for everybody listening, it'd be great to give a quick introduction to yourself.
Yeah, my name is Robert Johnston. I'm the CEO here at Adlumin. Adlumin is a command center for security operations built specifically for the channel. So we deliver a variety of software-only solutions and managed security products to our channel customers. And it ranges everything from managed detection and response to SIEM, SOAR, and security analytics to fully managed patching and scanning and security awareness training. So a full spectrum of software and then managed security products delivered through one cost-efficient, easy to use, and simple to integrate SaaS application.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. We've been doing quite a lot of research on you guys over the past couple of weeks since booking in this podcast. But I guess just sticking to Adlumin just for a moment, just tell me more about the vision of the company. What do you really want to achieve?
Yeah, so we feel and we know now at this point that there needed to be a leader in consolidation in the security operations sector. Like, especially when it came to the middle market or small to medium businesses, there is a longing both with partners in the channel, so value-added resellers, software integrators, distributors, managed service providers. They want one vendor to go to, and they want one vendor to go to in order to decrease complexity, decrease multi-vendor spend, and make security extremely convenient, right? And so that was the thesis, was that, hey, we're going to bring and really unify software-only security operation solutions and and managed security operation solutions like managed detection and response or managed patching or managed security awareness training, right? We're gonna unify those into a single SaaS application and be that consolidation vendor, that leading consolidation vendor around the world in the channel.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And you touched on a couple of the topics we're going to dive into today about the consolidation and things like that. So I'm sure we can dive into that in a moment. But I want to take it right back, Robert. So obviously you spent a lot of time in Marine Corps and things like that throughout your early days. I'd love to know how, number one, from the early days, how have you kind of built that kind of traction and become the CEO of a company? But also, how has that helped you becoming a CEO of a company as well?
Yeah, so I went to the Naval Academy here in the United States and was always interested in computer science, and then went into the Marine Corps. I spent 8 years in the Marines as a Marine officer in communications. I think from a technical perspective, the Marine Corps is not like a big helper, right? But it really helps you, I think, prepare a lot for the CEO position, certainly from a leadership perspective, and just leadership, crisis management, stress management, being a decision maker. One of the unique things about, I think, being a young officer is you're 22 years old or 21 years old, and you come into the Marine Corps, and they spend a lot of time training and developing you from a leadership perspective to make sure you're ready to take command and take control of things. And so at 22 years old, I entered the Marine Corps, and I was responsible for and led an organization of 65 people about at 22. And then, a lot of those people were much older than I was and much more experienced than I was, and had a lot more expertise in certain areas than I was at 22. But I'm still in charge, right? And so it builds a kind of personality that I think is ready for leadership as a CEO. Whereas the CEO, I'm not necessarily the go-to-market leader. I'm not the CRO. I'm not the CMO. I'm not the CFO, right? But I know enough about those areas in order to move bits and pieces around in order to make the whole system work, right? To make the whole company move in the right direction and lead that company in a specific direction and unify all the different verticals. And so I do think the Marine Corps helped from that perspective. Not everyone at 22 gets to be in charge of 65 people. A lot of them much older than they are, right? Like it's a unique experience, and one that I think the military does provide its junior officers, is that instrumental leadership experience and training.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool, and at 22, leading a large team of 65 people, I can imagine that came with its own challenges as well. But I want to dive into just a part you mentioned there about the early days when the Marine Corps kind of drove the leadership within you. What was the main key points that you learned from them early days?
Yeah, it's really, the Marine Corps definitely focuses on combat leadership, and so it is unique. The Marine Corps is a unique organization in that every officer will go through the same initial schools. So we're all trained the same way. And the first school you'll go to is 6 months long. It is, a grueling course in infantry tactics, right? They're teaching you how to command and control troops on the battlefield, and run attacks and set up defenses, and run ambushes, and like just the blocking and tackling of kind of infantry tactics. And it doesn't matter if you're a comptroller who runs finance, if you're a pilot that flies jets, a communicator, or an infantry officer, like everyone goes through that exact same training set. And although the kind of theme of it is infantry tactics, how to be a rifle platoon commander, they call it, how to be in charge of a Marine Corps rifle platoon, which is the smallest unit an officer will lead. And even though, that is the theme, the message they're trying to get across is leadership, right? How to make decisions. They have a famous kind of saying there, I think, at the Marine Corps. They say, well, what are you going to do now, Lieutenant? Right? Because you're all lieutenants when you first come in. So they say, what are you going to do now, Lieutenant? Right? And you hear this theme all the time because they put you in little leadership roles where you're leading your peers, and you'll reach kind of like a tactical decision point, or you'll reach a stressful situation, and then the cadre, the people in charge of instruction, will look at you and be like, what are you doing? What do you do now, Lieutenant? Right? Where they're trying to push you to make a decision. And I think what you quickly learn is that not every decision you make has to be 100% correct. I think a lot of not my peers who weren't in the military, that when everyone's looking at you like, what are we doing, boss? Right? And a lot of people without some experience are afraid to be the guy in the room that's like, no, we're going to do this. And I think it's going to work. I don't know. And I'm ready to face the consequences if it doesn't. Right. And so that it definitely helps with that.
Yeah, I think it's inspirational as well. If you actually look at the journey you've had, and how many people go into the Marine Corps and the Army and things like that within the US, and you've been through that journey and now a CEO of a company, it's very inspirational to a lot of people as well. I want to take it back to, you mentioned earlier on about the consolidation, especially with Adlumin. I had a podcast recently with another CEO, and we was talking about CISOs have probably 60 to 70 different security tools that they're working with at the same time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the consolidation of the market you are trying to capture and kind of alleviate.
Yeah, what Adlumin is really trying to alleviate is exactly that, where that problem you just stated is really kind of exasperated in that they have, all these different tools that are in all these different kind of categories of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is unique in that it's one industry with kind of many categories, and those categories are really solutions to point problems. There's endpoint problems, there are network problems, there are email security problems, there are data security problems, there are identity security problems, there are SaaS security problems, right? Cloud service provider problems. So it's like all these different problems, right? Where you can get attacked and damage can be caused. And so from that, you end up with a whole bunch of tools that pretty much attack that one problem, right? And there are tools that do try and unify all those attack services, but I think where the failure is being able to unify those attack services into a software-only solution. But in the middle market, especially because there's a talent shortage, there is a huge demand for managed security offerings. People are looking at these problems and they're like, great, patching, that's very time consuming. It's very complex. I only have 4 guys on my team. I think you use the word CISO. Very rarely in the middle market does a CISO actually exist, right? He's more of a head of IT or VP of information technology, VP of information or whatever you want to call it, right? Very rarely do you have security kind of separated from enterprise services or infrastructure, right? It's all just one head of IT and the four guys that or gals that work for him, right? And so that makes the problem much worse. They don't have the time, the expertise. I think for the most part, it's the time. They don't have the time to put into managing all those different layers of security, and they can't do it. And so, you need to make security less complex, right? You need to decrease the amount of vendors they have to work with, right? And you need to make the unification of software-only solutions, because not everything is a managed security problem, right? There are lots of software-only solutions that are valuable. But then there's that kind of subset that they have really hard, complex problems where a managed security solution fits best, right? And that's what Adlumin has really done a good job, is making that unification extremely convenient. We have the one SaaS application. You can buy your software-only solutions like SIEM, log management, vCISO Advisor, and then you've got your managed security offerings that are delivered through that same SaaS application that are, MDR, managed patching, security awareness training, things that are time consuming and extremely complex, right? So all of that is delivered from our single application, which makes that unification process very convenient.
Yeah.
And that's where the consolidation story really resonates. Look at in the enterprise at Bank of America, yeah, they can have 70 different products and they can have 70 different teams that just use those 70 different products. I think there are a lot more options at that kind of scale. So this problem will one day also reach the enterprise, I think, but in today's terms, the enterprise can largely still handle and manage it. All those different tools. The problem right now is overwhelming the middle market and kind of the enterprise light to middle market and on down.
Yeah. No, I think you're completely right as well. Even in smaller businesses, there's huge security threats. So it's just about kind of. I want to take it back to the beginning of Adlumin. How did you come up with the idea?
Well, initially we just wanted to build kind of a SIEM security analytics tool for the middle market. At the time, this is 5-6 years ago. The SIEM category was a very enterprise-based category, right? And all the tools were made for big companies, and that's not just from a pricing perspective. It was also just from a complexity perspective, right? They were hard to configure and hard to get up and running, long integration times, and we wanted to leverage kind of serverless computing to alleviate that, right? We wanted to leverage serverless computing to say, okay, let's build a very highly automated, low customization, high automation security analytics or SIEM tool, right? And so we were just selling that. And then that kind of brought us into the managed security realm. We're like, well, hey, the demand is there. People really want, some components of this under a managed security umbrella. And then that led us down the path of, well, MDR is really a symptom to a larger problem. MDR is only one managed security product. It's only one widget out of 8 widgets that Adlumin sells today. This problem exists in other areas. It exists in, routine, time-consuming, complex security operations tasks like patching, scanning, automated pen testing, security awareness training. Like, these things aren't sexy, right? They're not sexy at all, but they're incredibly necessary, incredibly value propositions, but they're also time consuming and complex. And so we said, well, let's take those that we know to be time consuming and complex and deliver them as a service through one single SaaS application. So that's where Adlumin kind of got to its position today, which is that command center for security operations. And we are that leading command center for security operations in component or in the middle market and in the channel. There's no one else like us.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a cool journey, and the journey that obviously you've got to now, scaling effectively as well, and adding each of these solutions on as you go. I think it's quite a testament to what you've achieved already in the business, Robert. So I guess just a question with that. Obviously, you've been with Adlumin for 6 years, and what's kind of the biggest challenges you've faced throughout that time, especially focusing on the mid-market area?
So one is certainly nailing the go-to-market, right? We in the early days, you just go kind of try and sell direct. That's what everybody does. And then you kind of morph and you kind of hammer down your go-to-market strategy. We use 100% channel strategy here. We don't do anything direct. And channel, we run a full breadth channel operation from distributors, software integrators, value-added resellers, just straight up resellers, managed service providers, run the whole gamut, right? And really nailing that go-to-market and finding a way from a unit economics perspective that manages reaching a large amount of the middle market very quickly. And I think we've done a good job of that. As CEO, the last couple of years have been hard. I feel like we've had to kind of manage and handle, every single economic shock that has managed to land on our front doorstep. Everything from managing through COVID to kind of the market crash and credit tightening to SVB failing, and so all of those things kind of sent ripples through the startup community and ripples through everyone's, all industry verticals. And so we've seen a lot at this point. So there's not a lot that kind of scares me at this point in time. I'm like, oh, another global crisis to add to, all the other global crises that I've seen over the years.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It seems to be one thing after another. So I think now it's just when's the next one coming? That's going to be the question. But no, I'm on that point. I'm pretty optimistic for the rest of the year, just from a lot of the conversations that I have. What's your thoughts on the rest of the year and beyond?
Yeah, so I think most people are eyes on the market right now, and I know you live not in the United States, and all eyes are on the U.S. market, which in a large part ripples throughout the global economy as well. And so everyone's looking at our high interest rates. They're looking at credit tightening. All of those things are currently going on, and so there's a lot of concern about how that will affect kind of global spend. And I do think interest rates are rising throughout the world as well, not just in the U.S. The interest rates are tightening and rising everywhere, and that will have some effect. I think security does tend to be well insulated from those kind of ripple effects, at least historically. I don't think it's immune. No one is immune to economic downturn, but security tends to be well insulated against too adverse outcomes that would kind of come from a recessionary environment. So I think most people are optimistic, but everyone is watching cautiously what's going on, right? And could it take a turn for the worse? Could it not? Could it be a soft landing, hard landing? No one really knows. I think at this point in time, things are looking good, looking okay, but no one is immune. So that's one of the things I think we're watching over here, and probably broadly everybody is watching the same thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want to touch on the because obviously there's everything happened in the world over the past few years, but obviously the market that you're specifically focusing on, the mid-market, SMB, some of these companies that you're probably working with have been hit quite hard, especially through COVID and now obviously everything that's going on. So how you're seeing that market specifically, and how are you helping your customers through this?
That market's been incredibly resilient. I think it's been really good, actually. I've been surprised by the resiliency, not just of the security sector, but of the customers for which we serve in the middle market. I think you're right. For the most part, you would expect there to be spending tightening. But the one thing you can't kind of crack down on or reduce is your security posture, right? It's really hard to do that. And the reason it's really hard to do that is because the threat just keeps getting worse, right? Every day, the world gets like a little more dangerous in cyberspace, and so it's really hard to cut back there. I do think that a lot of organizations, before they cut security, they cut other things, marketing and hiring and all these other things, but they don't cut their security. They don't reduce it because you really can't, because the consequences of doing that are now very significant. And so it's made for a good market, and serving, the channel, it's also made for a very kind of profitable endeavor for everybody, even through the hardest of times.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And it sounds like you're so right regarding the security aspect of it. I think a few years ago, people probably would have dropped security, maybe long before I was here. But I guess in terms of the growth that you want to go on as well with Adlumin, where do you want to go and take the business to? I know obviously you've got big plans and big growth over the past few years, but where does Adlumin in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think we just keep growing. Our business is growing so fast, and things are going so well. It's a very exciting time to be at Adlumin, and that means more people, more customers, more new markets. We're doing very well there, and so things continue to grow extremely quickly. And we're in a great market. It's also a very huge market. Like the TAM on the market is massive, and in the next 5 years, I think we'll be at thousands and thousands of customers across the globe. That's where I see Adlumin scaling to over the next 5 years.
Yeah, no, very cool indeed, and I'll be here watching from the sidelines and rooting for you as well, for sure. But I want to kind of take it back to the business aspect and a little bit of learnings. I ask these questions quite selfishly sometimes because I'm on my own entrepreneurial journey as I am. So I guess how do you scale a business effectively? As a CEO for 6 years, Marine Corps, you've had a really, really interesting life. I'd love to know a little bit more, about your kind of journey and your experiences and the learnings you've taken away.
Yeah, you got to nail the go-to-market is really what it comes down to there. There are all sorts of different go-to-market strategies, and you just have to make them fit your end customer, who you're trying to sell to at the end of the day. And so really getting good at that is everything. Yeah, you need a good product, and it needs to do its job, whatever job it is that you're trying to complete for the customer. But you got to have an economic way to bring it to as many of those people as possible. And we use a channel go-to-market strategy here, but there are many other go-to-market strategies other than channel. Channel just happens to work for us. There are plenty of other go-to-market motions that you can leverage, right? And so to scale the business, you've got to nail that, right? Because every business at the end of the day just becomes, especially at scale, becomes just one big math problem, right? It's one big math problem where there are metrics that you need to hit in order to really say, like, the business will work and it will continue to work the more customers I add, right? And so nailing the go-to-market is arguably, I think, the important aspect.
Yeah, and how do you do that? Because that's obviously right at the beginning. I have a lot of co-founders, CEOs on the podcast, and we dive into the detail, early stage, finding that product market fit and creating a go-to-market strategy. But how do you actually do that? Because sometimes it's hard to locate, even hiring, you have to locate the strategy before hiring the right person, because then the whole model changes. So yeah, just tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, one is just understanding who the end customer of your product is at the end of the day. Who's buying it and what are they buying, right? And what problem are you solving? You always got to start with that. Okay, we're solving this problem, and this is the buyer, right? And then you're just going to go try and sell to that buyer, right? And you're probably in the early days just going to go try and sell to them directly. That's all you're going to do, right? And you're going to find out a lot. But those are the early days, right? Those are the early days trying to nail product market fit, right? You do have to nail that first. And once you nail the product market fit, now it's a go-to-market problem, right? You have a product that the end customer wants to buy. now you've got a go-to-market problem, right? And then you start tackling your go-to-market problem, right? And so you got to know and understand who your customer is, right? If my customer is a middle market bank, well, how do I reach, tens of thousands of those? I can't go call them all directly. What is my average sales price? Well, my average sales price is X. Well, is that enough for me to do an enterprise sales motion where I'm trying to go one-to-one? If your average sales price is $1 million, the answer is yeah. You can go one-to-one, right? If your average sales price is, 100K, can't go one-to-one, right? And so then you've got to choose different strategies in order to get there. Are you going to be product-led, organization where you're kind of doing this free trial to, a bronze level subscription to a silver, to a gold, and an upsell motion where your product-led sales motion, right? So there's all sorts of different choices, but you got to do the product market fit piece first. So you have an end customer gets value from your product and they want to buy. Okay, well, now what go-to-market motion do I need to use in order to reach as many of those as possible? And there doesn't have to be more than one. You can use product-led and channel-led, all these different combinations, but you do have to have a good understanding of how you're going to bring it to market initially to get faster to revenue. And that's all about it in startup. And that informs your hiring decision. Okay, what's the fastest go-to-market to revenue, right? Well, the fastest go-to-market to revenue is a channel strategy. Okay, well, now we're in business, right? Now I know I need to go out there and find a channel leader, or I need to go out there and find an enterprise sales leader, or a product-led marketing, or product marketing leader, and a product-led sales leader, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you obviously mentioned hiring slightly there as well. How's hiring been for you over the past since starting the business?
It's gone through many iterations. I know you're kind of on the people side of the sector. Now in today's terms, hiring's contracting across most organizations. Not here at Adlumin, but hiring is certainly contracting. In 2021, that was a different story. There was, hiring people was far more difficult in 2021, far more difficult, right? And so it's gone through many kind of phases, and many cycles. Right now, you're in a tightening, right? There's especially in tech, there's a lot of layoffs, and those are occurring for companies trying to kind of get efficient for the impending kind of recessionary environment. And so, it's easier now because you're not losing as many employees. You're not, there's more talent just on the market now because of those layoffs. So, another person's loss is kind of like your gain, in a lot of ways. So it's right now, I think it's good, but it always goes in cycles. I think you'll end in a boom at some point, maybe a couple years from now. Hiring will be hard again, and you're back to, you're back to a tightening.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely a cycle. Nobody knows how long that cycle will loop back on itself on, but it's definitely a cycle for sure. But no, appreciate the insight there. And Robert, no, it's been amazing you having on the podcast. But I also want to ask kind of a closing question. It's always pretty interesting because sometimes it's very similar, the answers that we get from this question. But I guess in terms of if you had to head back to the early days of your career, what advice would you give to yourself?
The advice that I would give to myself is definitely focus more on the go-to-market piece. That's something Adlumin really had to grow into and nail, as well as the product market fit. In the early days, like I was an engineer, I just wanted to build things that people would buy. And so, I didn't focus as hard on the why. I didn't focus as hard on how I was going to bring the why to customers at the end of the day. It's hard sometimes, especially, maybe your first company and you're in the kind of fog of war and you're just trying to make things work, really spending some good amount of time on that, and being like, what's the real problem here and what's the real solution? And then how do I bring it to market? Focus a lot on that because that'll make your life a lot easier, if you get that right up front, or you get just close to right up front too. You know, nailing go-to-markets, I think, is actually a little easier. Product market fit is certainly the harder component of that, because when it comes to a go-to-market strategy, there's only a few that you can really choose from. You don't have like an infinite number of go-to-market strategies, right? There's only a few you can choose from, and you know, that's it. That's your finite set. But there are infinite numbers of products that can be developed for different problems. So spend time on that, real time on that, and then spend time on go-to-market, and be very deliberate about that. And you'll find a way to be successful.
Yeah. No, absolutely love it. And Robert, no, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'll be watching Adlumin from the sides as well, and maybe we can do it in a couple of years as well as a recap. But no, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Elliott.
Thank you, Robert. Bye.